Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay. We're in Manchester, New Hampshire. Joining us in the studio is Burt Cohen. Burt is a former state senator from New Hampshire, and he's supporting Bernie Sanders. He's a Bernie surrogate, which means he's like officially blessed to come and talk. So tell us about the area. Hillary's won this one, which Bernie certainly was expected to be ahead in most places. He may still wind up being. What kind of area is this?
It's a little surprising. Concord is, there's about 4 liberal places in New Hampshire, and that's one of them, quite frankly. There's Concord, there's Portsmouth, Keene, and Hanover. That's pretty much it for the progressive places. I'm a little bit surprised there. There is a current state senator there who's big into the oh no, actually she's not a state senator anymore. But I'm a little bit surprised there, to be perfectly honest.
You would have expected Bernie to win this one.
I would think so, yeah. I'm a little
Especially with, is that, we should have asked Jessica, is that a big turnout or not? I have no idea what the...
I don't really know. I'm not sure if it's a big turnout or not.
It sounds like maybe on the Democratic Party side, less than 2,000 in total.
Less than 2,000? Oh, that's pretty small, actually.
Yeah, that would be small. It's 700 something for Hillary and 600 something for Bernie.
Well, that's still reasonably close.
But
I mean, it's ridiculously early. The big cities haven't come in yet, obviously.
Right.
There's a lot of small towns.
Explain how the results work. This is not a winner-take-all state. Is that right?
No, it's not actually. It's a very good question. It's proportional. That say if Bernie were to get 55%, then 55% of the delegates would go to Bernie to the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia.
So percentage of the vote, you get that percentage of the delegates.
Yeah.
So in this particular place, he would have. It's very close. So he would have gotten about 20% less delegates than Hillary.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
But the night is young yet, and I expect. The turnout was apparently rather heavy all across the state, according to what I've heard here. And that should help Bernie. But, we have to recognize that the Clinton machine is a powerful machine. And as it was in Iowa, of course, we did very well in Iowa. But, and it's interesting that the Clinton people have said, oh, Bernie has an advantage because of neighboring state. That means nothing. Everybody in New Hampshire knew Hillary Clinton. Absolutely everybody, total saturation. I would say 6 months ago, maybe 5% of the people in New Hampshire knew who Bernie Sanders was. So. Well,
I wonder if there's a bit of rope-a-dope going on here where you can, raise everyone's expectations that he's going to win by 15, 20. One, perhaps less people come out and vote for Sanders because he feels, oh, we're going to win anyway. And 2, if he does win, he'd have to win by a tremendous amount for not to look like he didn't win, even if he wins.
Well, certainly the Clinton campaign is a very smart, very sharp political machine. And of course, they're raising expectations as high as they can. I haven't trusted some of those polling numbers, to be perfectly honest. I know some of the polling people there, and they tend to be a bit conservative, and politically speaking, not in terms of how they see their numbers, but definitely politically. So, it's kind of a setup. You're right, the rope-a-dope kind of thing, for sure. The expectations are so high. If she gets, say, if she only loses by 7%, is she going to be this comeback kid? Quite possibly. That's how they'll try to spin it. They're very adept.
So you've known Bernie for some time. You've been a supporter of his. One of the main arguments that's been projected or been given by the Clinton campaign is that you vote for Bernie because of your heart, because you believe in the big idea and the big picture, but it's not winnable. And if you really want some measure of reform, you have to vote for Hillary. I don't know how much this message penetrated. It's still early in the evening, but what do you make of the argument?
I think it's a bogus argument. I think it's completely wrong. Did it penetrate? Yeah, I think it probably did. A lot of people figure, oh, I like Bernie, but he can't win. Now, one of the reasons I came on to Bernie is because I think he can win. And Hillary, she has trust issues, quite frankly. But there is anger throughout the country, Republican, independent, and some Democrats. And it's a very legitimate anger. A lot of the anger, I think, went early on to the Tea Party because they figured this government is supposed to be our government, but it's not our government. It's owned and controlled by the big, powerful special interests, the corporations and the banksters. that's where I think Bernie connects with people. And, there's been this populist strain in America throughout our entire history, since before the Constitution with Shays' Rebellion. There's been a populist, strong feeling. It's been suppressed by the powerful special interests basically forever. But now I think it's starting to come out. And this is, I think, where Bernie comes in. Bernie, I do believe, is the strongest candidate for the general election. I really do. I think he can attract people. He can connect with people. People trust Bernie.
The hierarchy of the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party raises a heck of a lot of money on Wall Street.
Oh, yes?
They do not see Bernie, I don't think, as a possible nominee. Not only I guess they do everything to support the Clinton candidacy,
right.
But if Sanders actually does well and start looking electable in the sense that he can actually start winning enough primaries
right.
to be a serious contender, they're going to go nuts.
They are going to go nuts. No question about it. I loved the straightforwardness. I think that's one of Bernie's strengths. When there was some debate, I think one in New Hampshire, where Bernie was asked, they were both asked, how is Wall Street going to care for your candidacy? And Hillary said, I want everybody to love me. And Bernie said, they're not going to like me. And I'm reminded of FDR, who said, these powerful special interests, the banksters, I welcome their hate. I welcome their hatred. Bernie, to me, I loved FDR. He made some errors, I think, but he is a bit of a populist. He's certainly not.
I've talked to some union leaders
yes.
of some big unions.
Yeah.
And they won't say this publicly, but they've told me this off the record. Not recently, but I'm going to apply what they said to now. I asked them, why don't you contend more for control of the Democratic Party? The truth is the Democratic Party, as is the Republican Party, is an alliance of classes.
Yes.
The Republicans, as you could say, the right wing of the elites.
Yes.
And they ally with and try to arouse and persuade a right wing of the working class.
Absolutely.
More rural and small town.
Yes.
They get a little less, a bit of the urban. Most of the urban working class and urban people vote Democrat.
Yeah.
But it's an alliance of classes again. In the Democratic Party, you have, Wall Street and a whole sector of their own billionaires and that billionaire class that Bernie talks about. And the Democratic Party on the whole are quite dependent on those billionaires
Have been, yes.
and that level of finance. You're going to hear an argument from some trade union leaders and others that Bernie won't be viable because these Wall Street supporters of the Democratic Party won't fund the campaign, and they won't fund the Democratic Party, that all the Wall Street money is going to wind up going over to the Republicans.
That's probably true.
And so it becomes, thus, not a winnable campaign. I believe that's the argument you're going to hear behind doors.
Well, I have no doubt. I mean, there have been very wealthy people, interests on Wall Street, that certainly have a history of investing on both sides of the aisle. And they've supported Democrats who are friendly to Wall Street. They're not going to do that with Bernie, no question about it. I agree completely. And people say, well, where's Bernie going to get the money? He's basically kept up with Hillary thus far. Now, it's true, the general election is a much, much bigger deal. It's going to need a tremendous amount of money. I mean, I've given some money, I got to give some more. I think these millions of people who've already invested, they want to see their money work for them, so they're going to invest some more, I think. I think by spreading it out in smaller contributions, I mean, that's real democracy at work, and I know that sounds...
He's going to need his political revolution in funding to make this viable, because as they're saying, I mean, a lot of people are saying even to hit Super Tuesday, the amount of money it's going to take to do that.
He'll hit Super Tuesday. I think he'll hit it reasonably well, too.
In terms of finance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to take a lot of money, no doubt about it, but I think...
he raised, $20 million just in January, I believe it was.
He's picking up the money. I mean, people really like democracy, and I think that's one thing that's appealing to kids, is that they like the idea of democracy. And we have become, to me, a lot like what we did in 1776 when we overthrew, the aristocracy, the government by what FDR called economic royalists. This has tremendous appeal, I think, and to have it widespread. I mean, the Clintons took the party to the right with the Democratic Leadership Council in the 1990s to go after the big money. that was turning its back on the roots and the traditions and the principles of the Democratic Party. And Bernie, I think, is bringing it back. And hopefully the union people will see that. And I think a lot of the real rank and file union people are recognized that hey, Bernie is a strong candidate, and he's really going to speak
Just
for them.
before, one of the other things that's being talked about quite a bit is the role of superdelegates, and that there may be enough superdelegates combined with Hillary's delegates that even if Sanders does very well, the superdelegates might be able to block him at the convention. One, what do you make of that proposition? And two, if it happens, what are the consequences of that?
Well, it is a problem, I think. But superdelegates can switch. They're not locked in. They can switch at the last minute. Chances are, I mean, the superdelegates are a lot of elected officials, members of Congress and things like that, that have arrangements, shall we say, with the Clinton machine. You know, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of thing.
Yeah, very much so. We did an interview with Alan Grayson, who I think on policy clearly is on Sanders' page.
Yes.
He hasn't endorsed Clinton, but he won't endorse because he's assuming he's going to have to deal with Clinton.
Well, they're afraid of the Clinton machine. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a very, very powerful machine. And it's a big deal. I mean, politics can get ugly. It ain't beanbag, as somebody said. And they know, they got to work with it.
So what happens to the Democratic Party if, in terms of popular vote, especially the youth, and the convention comes out because of superdelegates with another choice? What happens to the Democratic Party?
It could still be Biden. I mean, the Democratic machine has made war on Bernie Sanders, and they're not going to take it lying down, that's for sure. They're just not going to do it. But it's still possible. It could be enough of an uprising, political revolution, shall we say.
Now, Bernie said he's going to endorse Hillary if he loses.
Sure.
If it's something, a place where the superdelegates essentially manipulate the vote away from him,
it'll be
then
tough.
what?
It'll be tough to convince a lot of young people, I think, because they'll be pretty mad about that. It'll look like a coup, and it'll be kind of a coup, actually, taking power, away from the people who actually voted. It still seems to me, the Supreme Court, the next president is going to have a few appointees to the U.S. Supreme Court. I value my rights.
Maybe 3 we hear.
I value my rights very much. To me, that's the most important thing. I will support the nominee of the party. I hope it's Bernie. I think Biden would be okay too. But, I think Hillary is a big risk for November. I just think, especially if they nominate somebody who's sane from the Republican Party. And
Kasich is doing very well here.
I'm not surprised.
When Bernie was asked in one of the recent debates, how do you run for the Democratic Party after you've been an independent for so many years? And he talked about how he caucuses with the Democratic Party and so on. He supported Obama.
He's a traditional Democrat in my mind.
Well, that's actually can also be a critique, given what's happened to, in many people's eyes, the Democratic Party. But he did say if he was president, he would push for a complete overhaul of the Democratic Party.
I think that's wonderful.
And what does he mean by that? Overhaul what?
My old friend Katrina vanden Heuvel of The Nation 25 years ago said the Democratic Party is up for grabs because a lot of people were moving away from the Democratic Party, to Greens and things like that. It has been up for grabs. We can take it at the local level, and that's exactly what's been going on. I think the political machine, the establishment, can't quite figure out what to do with it, and they're really taken by surprise here. But it is happening here, and I think we can reshape the Democratic Party to be like what FDR was all about, to be a populist, peace-loving. Hillary is very much of a hawk, and I think a lot of the people who are active in the Bernie campaign are, not for that. And I think a lot of the people in general, we don't want more wars. I mean, we've had enough of these horrible, crazy wars.
One of the critiques of Bernie is he hasn't said very much about that. He's talked in a more compromising way, but he's not really railed against the military-industrial complex.
No, this is true.
He hasn't talked about major cuts to the Pentagon budget. He's talked about more reallocating money.
Yeah.
And there's, we had Chris Hedges on earlier. He was making a point that the Democratic Party corporate leadership, it's very much part of the entire political establishment.
Oh, yeah.
And to think that you can take it from below and take power away from that money, But I wonder if what happens if there isn't some big split in the Democratic Party, that if these two forces do butt, which, as I said in the beginning, is a butting of class forces in many ways.
Right, it is.
You know, if you really take on the billionaire class, and if they own too much of the machine of the Democratic Party, do we at some point see a real split and some new third party begins in that way?
Well, we see it in the Republican Party now as well. They're really divided amongst themselves. We've seen this before. I mean, there was the McGovern wing of the party, what Paul Wellstone called the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. There have been these splits before, and we have muddled through thus far. I think we still will. I do, because, I mean, when it comes down, it might be difficult. It's true. You know, there was Lyndon Johnson and Jim McCarthy. I do.
But if he doesn't, are you going to go out and knock on doors for Hillary?
I will vote for Hillary if she's the nominee. I don't
Not
think she's
knocking
going to
on
be
any doors.
No, I don't think she'll be the nominee. I was early on for Bernie. I don't think she'll be the nominee. I will vote for her, just for the sake of the Supreme Court, and I will urge people who are doubters. I mean, there are some Bernie people say Bernie or bust.
I'm hearing quite a bit of that.
Yeah, that concerns me. I don't want a Republican to win. We can't let that happen.
But you're not out working for her if she's running.
We'll see what happens at the time.
All right, thanks.
Is that political enough an answer?
Yeah, that's a diplomatic answer. Burt, thanks very much for joining us. We may catch up with you later at the Sanders watching party.
Right.
And thanks for joining us.